British establishment is not to be underestimated. They are somehow, in some way that is not clear and not disclosed, they still have disproportionate power. IDF is disintegrating. People are refusing to serve. Active duty soldiers are absolutely exhausted, demoralized. Unless they were attacked by an external enemy, and then everybody says, it's war, let's go, we have to defend ourselves. Unless that happens, I don't even see how Israel survives.
I think you do have to pay attention to Russia and China. As much as Trump says about China, or as much as he talks about them ripping us off, and you have the trade and tariff wars, and they're doing a lot of damage, people always got to remember that Trump always does say, I get along with Putin, I get along with Xi. He doesn't say that about the Europeans.
Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes a duty. So said Thomas Jefferson. Go to bit.ly/lawful tax protest or bit.ly/make war history and find out why it is a criminal offence to pay central government or local government taxes in the UK. And let's make war history. Hey Alex. This is very easy and also very confusing because I only need to remember one name. But I don't know which one I'm talking to. Thank you so much, both of you, for making yourself available. I'll start with you, Mr. Christoforou. You are half of the Duran.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for making yourself available. And
thank you for having me on.
You're so welcome. And Mr. Krainer, you are all of the Naked Hedgie, all by yourself.
That's true. Thank you for having me also. Good to join you. And warm greetings from Monaco to everyone out there.
Yes, thank you. And I've been trying to get both of you together for a while, and we finally made it work for our schedules. Mr. Christoforou, do you want to say a little bit about the Duran and where people can find you and who you are and what you are and why you are?
We're a geopolitical news channel. You can find us on every platform, to be quite honest. From YouTube to Telegram to ODYSEE, Rumble, Locals, theduran.locals.com. You can find the Duran channel, my channel, Alex Christoforou, and Alexander Makaris' channel as well.
Yep. Thank you so much. And I'll have the links to something in the description below. I think the Locals probably. Yeah. And you are a little bit English and understated when you say, oh, we're a geopolitical channel. No, you are sublimely insightful geopolitical channel.
Yeah, we try.
You do really, really well, both you and Alexander. Mr. Krainer.
Yes, people can find me on X. My handle is @NakedHedgie. I have two publications on Substack. Personal one, Alex Krainer's Substack, and the professional one, which is called iSystem Trend Following. And then there's others, but these three are where I'm most active.
Yeah, apart from appearing on lots of on guesting on many other channels with your fabulous analysis and everything.
Yes, still don't know how to say no.
We should sign an exclusive contract that you only appear on Crypto Rich, right? And you do a trend following service where people can. I think it's an algorithm or something that you designed and have been using for many years that shows what the trends are in the
Yes,
market.
it's a model that I designed in 1999 and then built it up to a professional version in 2003. I've been using it ever since. I used it as a hedge fund manager, and now I use it as a decision support service for investors and traders. And I publish a variety of newsletters on a daily basis on the basis of this.
Yep, and this includes also. I think it's very affordable, and I have the links to that in the description below if people want to go and check it out and take a look. Because it's also for small investors. You don't have to be a hedge fund in order to, or big pockets.
Yeah, it starts less than Starbucks, less than the Starbucks.
Less than Starbucks. Okay, all right, very good. Okay, where shall we start? I will propose something that maybe you don't know much about, both of you, because you haven't been following it, and then we can move on to something else if that's the case. And this is regarding Keir Starmer, or Keir Stasi, or Keir Stalin, or Keir Starmer, or two-tier Keir, or however it is. You know about the video that's emerged allegedly of him kissing Lord Ali, and apparently there's more videos that have yet to come out and see the light of day. And it's not that he's gay. We don't care about that. It's that he has no honor. He has no honor. Anything any of you want to say with regards to that and the state of the UK? And I started with a dud.
Well, no, it's not a dud. I was just silent because I thought Alex would go first. But
Oh,
okay,
which
you did
Alex?
as well.
Which Alex?
Well, obviously not me.
Well, I call him 008, Keir Starmer.
It should really be called 000.
License to bore you. The guy is extremely boring, but I don't know. I guess he leads a very spicy personal life. I guess I don't know.
Yes.
You know, what can you say about Keir Starmer?
He is extremely boring and extremely dangerous.
He does as he's told. He does as he's told, and I think the biggest problem with Keir Starmer, from a foreign policy perspective, I mean, a huge problem for the UK, but for my purposes, as we're a geopolitical channel, is his commitment to Project Ukraine. No doubt that the UK, Starmer, along with France and Macron, are absolutely running Project Ukraine now, and that's going to become a complete disaster and train wreck for him.
Yeah, and for Europe and the UK. Mr. Krainer?
Well, I think it's another blow to Britain, to the British people who have been systematically and consistently demoralized now for I don't know how long. So Starmer stinks, but before Starmer there was Rishi Sunak, and before him there was Liz Truss and Boris Johnson and Theresa May and David Cameron, and they all suck. Yeah, I guess that's the technical term. It's always the same. The policies don't change. Things are getting worse and worse and worse for the British people. Britain is, the mask of this liberal democracy that is, enmeshed in all these imperialist misadventures only because they are faithfully following their ally, the United States, which is dragging them into all these bad situations around the world. That mask is really peeling away now, and we're discovering that Britain is actually leading the way. And this gets extremely interesting. And I think it's not just that this is going to be disastrous for Keir Starmer. I think it's going to be disastrous in general for the British establishment. And I'm afraid that the people who are going to obviously be stuck with the tab are going to be the British people. And I think that the really unfortunate part about this is that the British people have lived under this regime for so long, the continuity of so many generations, and they've been lied to for so long that if I were British, I wouldn't really be sure where to start. You'd have to start from a blank page somehow. And so I don't know where the situation goes, but I hope that it doesn't become one of those North Korea nations that, because the regime feels they need to preserve themselves, they're going to be left just with their own population, and they're going to take them as human shields and barricade themselves away from any threatening influence, which obviously now is Russia. But if you listen carefully to the voices of the British establishment, they're now regarding the United States as an enemy nation. And so where does that leave you? What does that leave you with? And then, they've been engaged in a scramble for Africa for the last, I don't know how long, 20 years or so. They've been reestablishing colonial control over many African countries and their resources. And now we see that this is being attacked by the Russians and possibly by the Chinese, because I think that they know that this is the source of strength. There's British establishment is not to be underestimated. They are somehow, in some way that is not clear and not disclosed, they still have disproportionate power. We see that Britain is signing military cooperation agreements left and right, as though they were a major military power, and all the nations around the world are scrambling to have some kind of a military cooperation with Britain. So there is some kind of a basis to their power. I'm not sure what it is. I'm pretty sure it has to do with money, but it also has to do with secret diplomacy and their intelligence network. We remember that during the COVID-19 pandemic, Tony Blair tweeted out, boasting how, quote, we have teams embedded in all the governments around the world. I don't know what that means exactly, but when they sign a military cooperation agreement with Bosnia and Herzegovina, that is a major head scratcher for me. I don't know how that happens, but clearly it does happen. And I think that the fall of Britain is going to be a very, very tumultuous event, not just for Britain, but I think maybe for all the rest of us.
Mr. Christoforou?
The intel agencies of the UK, that's pretty much all they've got left. They've been hollowed out so much over the past decades that their intel agencies, though, are still top, and they meddle around pretty much all over the world, including heavily in the United States, by the way, very much in the United States. But Keir Starmer, my thinking on Keir Starmer, and I think the number one priority for the British establishment is above anything else is to reverse Brexit.
Really?
Yeah.
Number one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's number one.
Above breaking up Russia and plundering Russia?
Well, I think Russia is a good way to reverse Brexit. And when I mean reverse Brexit, I'm not saying they're going to have another referendum or anything like that, but to find a way to reintegrate the UK into the EU, and then I agree with what Alex is saying. I think once, I don't know which one will collapse first. I don't know if it'll be the UK first, if it will be the EU or the EU and then the UK. But I think together they're going to go down one after the other. It's very important to get the UK back into the EU. It's important for the globalist cause. It's important for the establishment. I don't think they've ever gotten over Brexit, and I think we've been seeing over the past few years, going through all the various prime ministers, that they've all been taking steps to realign the UK closer with the EU, and I think that's going to happen. Russia's a great excuse because they can fight Russia together. They can unite the UK and France, the UK and the European Union. Throw Germany in there. You have the nice, powerful three, the big three: Germany, France, and the UK. The UK is very hot on the idea of Germany rearming. I mean, they're very hot. They love it. They really do love it. The idea that Germany's going to build up a military. With the British media, they're all over that one, and that's the goal. You're going to have to take on Russia, so you're going to have to get back together with the gang, with the EU gang, and that's how they're going to do it.
And sacrifice other people in that conflict through.
Even if it isn't a conflict, I want to say I'm not saying it's going to be a conflict, a war.
Right.
I mean, I don't think they would last a week, even in 4 or 5 years. Even if they were to rearm, as they say they're going to rearm, and all of this talk, even if they were to do something like that and bump up their spending to fulfill the NATO targets and create an EU army, they still will not last a week against Russia. People forget that Russia is fighting the war with Ukraine for many reasons, but they actually care about the land and the people in Ukraine where they are fighting the war. Believe me, if they had to go after if they had to get into any kind of a conflict with any other country in Europe, it would be very quick, and the Russians wouldn't give one what about the opponent. But I'm not saying it's going to get there. I don't think it'll get there, but it's a great way to get the UK back integrated in some form or another with the European Union.
Okay, now I can get why the European Union would want the UK back, so they can continue sucking life out of the UK in order to shore up the euro and their own finances. But why would the British remnants of the British Empire want to get back in with the EU?
Because it's the British Empire.
Okay, fine.
They're all the same group. They're all the same gang. I mean, it's that simple. It's the globe. It's all the same globalists. And they have to take on a multipolar world right now. So I mean,
they got nothing else. They got nothing else. Okay.
Stronger together.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or dying together. Mr. Krainer?
Well, yeah, I have to agree with Alex, and I think that the way it works is that if the cabal in London decides on some agenda, then Canada, Australia, Japan, they follow suit.
Yeah.
It's just it's not like they have any real sovereignty to say, oh no, we're not going to be doing that. The only problem is that they are a dispersed archipelago of weak powers. So there isn't really much that they can do. But, the part that's worrisome is that it seems that their logic is, if we get ourselves into a real mess, the Americans are going to have to come and bail us out. So even though I think they have no illusions about being able to defeat Russia, they think, if we create a big mess, if we get ourselves into real trouble, then surely the Americans are going to have to come to our aid. And so rather than, cutting their losses, changing course, and maybe deciding to become a neutral island nation that minds its own business, I think that they are desperate to get into that mess. They are working on that agenda, and this is their plan. And then the more the merrier, So, hey, coalition of the willing, we're 6. And the Dutch are with us, and the Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are with us. And I think they keep selling the Turks on this great Turania project, and that the Turkish deep state is still kind of hedging their bets on that, and still, I think, is transacting with the British deep state. And I think I'm kind of leaning to the conclusion that the whole Syria mess, that the trap was for Turkey, that the trap was laid for Turkey there, to absorb them into a quagmire, so that they are maybe weakened, so that they cannot, get themselves into a Crimea War 2.0 somehow.
Who said
Anyway,
the British for Turkey? Who said
no, sorry, I have to rewind. So how in late November last year, early December, Syrian government just folded practically without a fight.
Yeah.
So to my mind, there's no way that can just happen. 250,000 well-armed, well-fortified Syrian troops folds to a ragtag militia of 30,000 jihadis on pickup trucks with light armor. That was an order. There was an order to do that, and I think that there was a reason why this was done, and I think that part of the reason was to drag these jihadis into Syria as a trap. It wasn't clear to me who this was against, but I think it's exactly to get Turkey enmeshed in something that would weigh them down. Because, the British establishment is still trying to move the pieces into place for Crimea 2.0, because even though they've lost in Ukraine, they are still extremely keen on retaining control over the Black Sea. And they're panicked at the idea that they might lose Odessa, and then the whole rest of the coast, and then bye Black Sea. And so I think they're trying to somehow get Turkey to buy into that. And Turkey might, we don't know, because I don't know what's going on with Erdogan. He's less and less visible, but obviously the Turkish deep state is very, very active and still in cahoots with the British deep state. And so, together with France, they could line up Crimea War 2.0. And I don't know, maybe the Russians, the Iranians, the Chinese see that eventuality as possible. And so I'm just saying, maybe that trap in Syria was laid for the Turks. to get into a quicksand so they can't move on other fronts.
Alex, Christoforou?
Uh, the UK, the EU, what they need to do, the collective West, what they need to do now that the United States is out of the collective West game for now is just wait. I think that's the strategy. It's probably the correct strategy as well, just to wait Trump out for 4 years. So if they can unite together, do their thing, try to keep the conflict in Ukraine going, which it won't happen, but Russia's going to win this thing. But at least you can keep the enemy as being Russia. You could definitely keep that alive for 3-4 years. You can continue to talk about building up your military, rearming, and then you wait for the next election cycle. No doubt the Europeans and especially the UK, they'll do their best to make sure that they try to get a US government that's more favorable to them and the way they see the world. And I think that's the strategy that they have going forward. I mean, their number one fear has always been that the US leaves them. And I think they look at this as just a temporary exit for the United States. They see it as just a 4-year thing. And it's a Trump thing for them. So, okay, so Trump, this crazy guy in the White House, he's trying to leave Europe. We can't have that happen. Okay. We can't really go against him, but we'll wait him out.
Okay. And then what about Alex's comment about Turkey?
Turkey, as a Greek, as a Cypriot, we know Turkey really well. Look, Erdogan's. Here's the thing with Turkey. If there's one country that Turkey fears, absolutely fears, and will never, I don't want to say never, will absolutely be scared to get into a conflict with, it's Russia. They absolutely fear Russia, not the United States. They fear Russia more than any other country on the entire planet.
Okay, and what's your evidence for that? I'm not.
I know. Trust me. I know. I live this. I live this. It goes back. It goes back through history. It goes back through as Alex said, the many wars
for many years.
Yeah. But it's the Russians that they fear the absolute most. What happened in I mean, look, you do see this kind of Crimea war thing creeping up, and that you had the Black Sea meeting that took place last week, where they were discussing the grain deal that fell apart, the Black Sea ceasefire that never really got up off the ground. And there was a meeting in Turkey with France, the UK, Ukraine, and Turkey hosted this event. But from what I understand, there were no real top-level officials at this event. I think Erdogan is doing what Erdogan always does, which is kind of play both sides. And he's very good at that. He's very good at positioning Turkey kind of in the middle, looking to get benefits from one side. Let's say get benefits from the collective West, or from the US, looking to get benefits from the other side. Let's say BRICS, Russia, China, whatever. He's very good at playing the middle. Very, very skilled at doing that. Probably the best in the world at this type of game. And it's worked for him. It's worked for him. He's been the one country that can be in NATO and still cut deals with Russia and get S-400s and all those things. So for Erdogan, it's classic Erdogan. I think what's going on. I think you have the British probably feel they can get Erdogan on side, not realizing who Erdogan is. I think the Russians, they're onto Erdogan, but they need Turkey. They need to have Turkey on side for various reasons. I think that will diminish as the Russians continue to wind down Ukraine. But definitely for the first 3 years, it was critical that they had Erdogan at least partly with them, given the conflict that they were in.
To police the Black Sea.
Well, a lot of reasons. There's the Black Sea. There's trade. There's Turkey. What Turkey adds to the Russian economy. What Russia can do with Turkey. I mean, we gotta remember, Turkey resisted a lot of pressure to place sanctions on Russia. They resisted a lot of pressure with the Black Sea. Yes, they also sold weapons Ukraine, and they took a lot of the weapons in Syria. Rumor has it, I believe these rumors. I think they're more than rumors. A lot of the weapons that were gathered in Syria, for example, artillery shells went to Ukraine. Now, how effective were those artillery shells? How good were they? That's a different question. Probably a lot of duds in what was sent over. But still, that's the game that Erdogan plays.
Right.
And Russians are realists. So I think Putin's pragmatic, and he understands the games that Turkey is playing against Russia, but he also understands the things that Turkey does for Russia. But this is Erdogan. So I think Erdogan, that's the way he's always going to operate. And I think the Russians are more on to Erdogan than the West and say the British are.
Okay. And then, Mr. Krainer, what about the argument that Turkey moving into Syria stymies Israel's project for a greater Israel?
Come again? Forgive me, I didn't understand exactly what the question is.
So Tom has said this, right? That Turkey being in Syria prevents Israel's expansion into a greater Israel.
Well, yeah, that's clear, and it seems to me that Israel and Turkey are headed into some kind of a conflict. Israel has upgraded Turkey into their number one enemy, even bigger enemy than Iran. And the Turks want to. So Israel wants to splinter Syria. They want it balkanized, kind of between HTS, the Kurds, their loyal Druze militia, and whatever. They want to balkanize Syria at their doorstep so that it's a soft target for them. They can control it. Whereas Turkey wants a unified territory under their control. And so it seems to me that the Turks are trying to build a security architecture there, military bases, air defenses, heavy weaponry, which the Israelis, apart from wanting massive chunks of Syria, like if you put together maps of the Ottoman Empire and the map of the Eretz Israel that all of these right-wing fanatics in Israel are aspiring to, you see that they have a massive overlap.
Mm.
And so even though I think this is not being discussed in the open now, it is in the flow of the narrative on both sides. And so that is pushing them into a conflict. And so they recently had talks in Baku, Azerbaijan, on creating deconfliction mechanisms. But I think it's I think that the momentum towards a conflict, and not to forget the public opinion on Turkish side, will overwhelm this. I think that the deconfliction mechanism isn't going to do very much at all. So I think that something's going to go down eventually, unless Israel implodes all by itself. The civil war breaks out in Israel, and things just go belly up all of their own, and then the whole axis of resistance and Turkey decide to step away and wait it out. Because if you give Israel an external enemy, that is, if you attack Israel, then they're going to unite behind whatever leadership they have. They're all going to close ranks behind Netanyahu or whoever is going to be in power after them. But if you just sit by the river, eventually you're going to see the corpse of your enemy float by. And I think maybe that's the path they're choosing, which would probably be wise, but I don't know. This is not the kind of stuff that's going to come out in the front page headlines.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially not in the mainstream media.
No, definitely not in the mainstream media, which is why people should watch out for Alex's stuff on Substack and also the Duran stuff all over the place. I discovered you on Podbean the other day, Alex, Christoforou. I didn't know that Duran were on Podbean, but you are.
I guess we are. I didn't know either.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, let's keep traveling, right? So we're now in Israel. So, Mr. Christoforou, any comments on the wonderful shape that the Israeli state is in and what a model it is for the rest of the world and how to conduct international relations?
If it's look, I think it's a hard country to get a feel for unless you're there or you live there or you have a deep understanding. I mean, it's Israeli politics is very complicated,
Mm.
very 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 cutthroat as well, very difficult. Um, where Israel's going, I can't say. I could talk about where they're trying to push with regards to Iran.
Yeah.
In Gaza, they're stuck. That's the way it seems. They're stuck. It wasn't as easy as they thought it was going to be. It doesn't mean that that Hamas or Hezbollah were not weakened. I think they have been weakened. I think if you say they're not weakened or something like that, I think that's not being honest.
Mm.
They have been weakened. But so has Israel.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The economy's not in great shape either in Israel as well. So I mean, Israel was weakened, and now they're looking to get something going. At least Netanyahu is looking to get something going with Iran. It looks like Trump is not biting at the moment. At least that's what we get from a New York Times report. I mean, I know people are going to probably watch this video and say, of course, Trump wants to start a war with Iran. I'm going by various reports,
Mhm.
and I'm also going by the fact that he does have Witkoff negotiating with Iran, and it looks like things are going well. And I say that not coming from the American side. I say that because that's what the Iranian side is saying. The Iranian side is saying things are going well. That's what we have to go off of. We have a report saying that they wanted to push for Israel had a plan for a 1 week strike, all-out strike with the United States on nuclear facilities. The Trump administration turned it down. Trump, Hegseth, Gabbard, Susie Wiles, they all said no. There were some people in the Trump administration that seemed to like this idea. And then you have Witkoff. He's had 2 meetings with the Iranian foreign minister. The Iranian foreign minister has said that things are looking cautiously optimistic. Those were his words, not my words. And we're now moving to technical talks. Now, this is an easy deal because both sides want it. The United States doesn't want Iran to get nukes. Iran doesn't want nukes. Russia doesn't want Iran to get nukes. Saudi Arabia doesn't want Iran to get nukes. No one wants Iran to get nuclear weapons. Israel doesn't want Iran. No one wants Iran to get nuclear weapons. So on the surface, this is a pretty easy deal, but you have the neocons, you have the hardliners in Israel who can keep on believing that all of their troubles, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Hezbollah, Hamas, there's no connection, or at least there wasn't a connection between Hamas and Iran. But okay, they believe that Hamas, Hezbollah, everything, it all goes back to the source of Iran. It's this belief that Iran is the source of all of their problems, and then all the problems in the Middle East. That's the belief. So you have to cut off the head of the snake, right? So I think that's the problem in all of this is can the Trump administration continue to work towards diplomacy with Iran if that is indeed the intention? I think that's where we are. As far as the state of Israel or Netanyahu's position, I think it's hard to get a read for it. I really do. I talk to a lot of people who have different views on how they see the strength of the Netanyahu administration. Some people tell me he's very strong, a lot of support. Other people tell me he's not strong, doesn't have support. And once again, I live in a place which is about 20 miles, 25 miles from I don't know, 40, however close to Israel, right? It's just right across, a 20-minute flight. 20-minute flight. We're in Israel, right? So everyone always tells me the same thing. Unless you're there and you see it, you're not really going to get a feel for what's really going on. So I can't really say with confidence what's the state of the Netanyahu administration. I'm just not confident enough to say it.
Yes. I think Mr. Krainer may have an idea from our previous conversation with Tom Luongo a few weeks ago. Certainly the internal state of Israel Alex, any commentary on Israel?
Well, one of our friends is an independent journalist in Israel who said that the place, even before the October 7th happened, that the place is pretty much a shithole, and now it's a much worse shithole. A lot of Israelis are very disaffected. Many of them believe that 7 October was a false flag. Is this going on YouTube?
It doesn't have to.
Okay. I don't really mean that. I'm just like citing what these, unhinged people are saying. And then, I think that Netanyahu's support and popularity, who the hell knows? Because I think it's like the VIX index, It's like, it's there very low, and then it spikes, and then it goes back to being there very low. Like it spikes when they managed to kill Hassan Nasrallah, and then take Syria, and then it falls right back into everybody hating Netanyahu. Well, not everybody, but I think by now it's a significant majority in Israel. And I don't know the source of this, but Alistair Crook said it that 60% of Israelis, according to Israeli polls, believe that the country is headed for a civil war. Alistair Crook doesn't speak nonsense. He's very well informed, and so that's a staggering number of Israelis. I mean, civil wars are the worst kind of wars, the cruelest, the bloodiest, the most horrid. How many Israelis want to stay around for that if they have a choice to bail out? So the numbers of Israelis that are leaving or planning to leave, we don't know, but I think it's quite significant. What is the future? What is the future if you were there, if you wanted to have a career, to develop a business, to have a good life? I think that that's been dashed, and I think that probably a very, very substantial segment of the population as we speak is planning to just get the hell out.
Yep, that all makes sense. You would, wouldn't you? If it's going down the pan, risk of conscription, ongoing war, no jobs, businesses collapsing.
IDF is disintegrating. People are refusing to serve. Active duty soldiers are absolutely exhausted, demoralized. I can't imagine. I mean, unless they were attacked by an external enemy, and then everybody says, it's war, let's go, we have to defend ourselves. Unless that happens, I don't even see how Israel survives.
Okay. All right. Alex Christoforou, do you want to come back on anything? Or we can go further south to Yemen and the Houthis?
No, I mean, I'll just go back to what I said. I think it's difficult to get a feel for what is taking place unless you're there in that case. I mean, I kind of I say the same thing about understanding Russia in a way as well. There's certain places where we unless you're there, you don't really get a feel for what's happening or how things are moving. I'm very confident in my Russia analysis because I go there quite often, and I do have an understanding as to what's there. I think Israel. I'm very close to the region where I am right now, and I think I may have a sense, but it's with Netanyahu and his administration. In a way, he does remind me of Erdogan in a way because everyone's always saying Erdogan, he's on his way out, the lira's crashing, Turkey's crashing.
Yeah, Alex, may I ask a question?
We're waiting. Yeah.
Did you hear Netanyahu's speech this week?
Which probably not which the speech. Which one?
It was just
there was a video segment that I mean there was a snippet that went around on
it was like
on X, but I forgot what it was about.
It was a whole speech to the nation. It was I think it was in Hebrew, but it was dubbed in English, and it was pretty much Hamas, 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 blah, 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 blah. Hamas, 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 blah, 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 blah. Blaming all the problems of the country on Hamas. But to me, he seemed the opposite of confident. He made a show of confidence. He stood there, tough and resolute, but it seemed very thin. It somehow seemed very defensive and almost frightened.
Look, there is one thing that I do that actually we covered on the Duran, and Alexander was actually talking about this, and he was spot on in his analysis. This was about 2 months ago, perhaps, and that is that the Trump administration is trying to cover for Netanyahu, in a sense that they've taken the approach. The Trump administration has taken the approach, though he's not seeing eye to eye with Netanyahu with regards to getting into a war with Iran and escalating. He has taken the approach, which is the devil is better than having Netanyahu out and then having all kinds of chaos, because no one can predict what would happen in the politics in Israel if Netanyahu were to somehow be pushed aside. And so it does look like the Trump administration publicly, they make it as the United States is absolutely going to support Netanyahu in the direction that he's going. Actually, I believe even yesterday, Trump posted something on Truth Social. I forgot exactly the details of it, where he said that he spoke with Netanyahu and they're on the same page.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
And he's saying that stuff because it does look like the administration has taken the approach. Let's prop up Netanyahu because he is coming under serious pressure at home with all the rival factions and everyone looking to push him out. But let's keep him there because what we need is some sort of stability, someone that we know, that we can deal with, that we know for so many years, and at the same time, as we're trying to provide cover for him, we need to work out some sort of a way to de-escalate with Iran. So it's this very fine balancing act that they're playing with Israel, the United States, and it does make sense that's where the Trump administration is moving with the region.
Yeah.
If Netanyahu stays, it will be trouble, but if he goes, it will be double.
That's why I said, this is from what my understanding of the situation is. It's very much the devil we know type of situation. Yeah. And I think that people are really misreading a lot of the Trump administration, because when you talk about Trump, everyone gets very polarized, and Biden was so much easier to deal with. But when you deal with Trump, you get it from all sides. But if there's one thing that I think the Trump administration wanted when they first got into office, is they wanted stability. Now, have they executed on that? Probably not. Things are incredibly unstable. But I think that Trump, the man, his true intentions were, I need to stabilize things in the world. That means Israel, that means Russia, Iran, all these things, because I've got this ambitious agenda in the United States. Now, I'm saying that's what he wanted to do, or that was his belief. I'm not saying that's what's happened 3 months later.
Right. Because what's happened 3 months later, campaigning on an anti-war ticket, he started bombing the Houthis. Because the Houthis were putting pressure on Israel by the Red Sea blockade to restore the ceasefire, which Israel had broken.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
Yeah, to me that just doesn't explain itself. It's stupid so far beyond redemption that I just cannot believe that the rationales that we know about are the reason for it.
Yeah. Just before you say what you said before, certainly, if you're going to say that, and you might have to say it now, even if you weren't going to say it, because I've said this, right? But I was thinking about what you've said, Alex. The impact of the bombing on the Houthis on Europe. Another reason why it may be valid, we're always given a pretense, a fraudulent reason for war. With Iraq, it was WMD instead of actually him not preventing him from using the euro to sell oil. With Libya, it's because Gaddafi's a brutal dictator. Well, actually, no, he was going to back his currency with gold, plus a few other things that the West didn't like. With Russia, it's Putin bad. That's why we have to destroy Russia. Well, the $75 trillion worth of resources may have something to do with it.
Preposterous.
So do you want to say, Alex? I don't know, Mr. Christoforou. I don't know if you've heard this take that Alex has said about the Houthis and Russia, and sorry, in the US.
Well, as I was struggling with this question, because it so doesn't make sense, I can't even believe that they started bombing Yemen. Because, like, even if you have, at the very top of the pyramid, you have Donald Trump and Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and all these people, and maybe they could all convince themselves that bombing Yemen is a good idea. There's a whole hierarchy down there of military personnel who might say, that's a bad idea. We're not gonna get anything done other than risk getting one of our ships sunk, aircraft downed, 21 or 22 MQ-9 Reaper drones downed, and so on, to achieve exactly nothing. But what it did achieve is that it closed the Red Sea to commercial maritime traffic, not just for Israel, which is what the Houthis originally intended, but for everybody. Between 55 and 60% of all of the world's trade passes through the Red Sea, and virtually all of it is Europe's trade. So you basically blew up another Nord Stream pipeline, essentially, for Europe. So you actually bombed Europe economically and financially. That's what happened. Whether they planned it this way, whether this was intentional or not, who knows? But the fact, so why do I think that? It's because of what Larry Wilkerson explained about the tabletop exercise that they held exactly over this scenario, and came to the conclusion that this is the hottest strategic spot in the world. The CENTCOM called it the new global hub of competitiveness, and now it's cut off. Is that plausible? I think it is plausible. Is it the actual reason? I don't know.
Sorry, Chris.
Not to damage Europe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To strike a blow against Europe, which would be just one in a sequence, in a consistent sequence of blows by the United States against Europe. It's just like one thing after another. The tariffs, the Nord Stream 2, that wasn't Trump, but I don't know who actually crafts policies. The administrations are executing them. I don't know who crafts it.
Like 10% tariffs on the UK, 20% on the European Union,
5% protection racket. 5% of the GDP protection racket. The protection racket doubled, and on and on and on. And then when Trump entered office, the euro was $1.04. Now the euro is $1.14. So now all the European imports in the United States are suddenly 9% more expensive, and the American exports to Europe are 9% cheaper. So it's just one thing after another. They want to scoop up Europe's technology and industries, and I don't know, maybe turn Europe into a tourist resort and a museum for everybody else to come and visit.
Yeah, they definitely don't want to scoop up European values, because those have many genders. European values
and regulations.
Yes,
I bet you they want whoever designed those bottle caps that stay on the bottle when you open it. I bet you they want those people in the United States to share their innovations.
That's right. This is high stakes game. I actually like those lids that stay.
They're like, why didn't we come up with this? Damn! Destroy Europe. Break the Red Sea trade route. That's what happened.
All right. Well, look, just to finish up, how about the last bit on the United States? On what's happening in the United States? Mr. Christoforou?
With which part? There's a lot.
Any part you fancy.
Oh, gosh. With the United States, it's all Trump, man. It's all Trump. What can you say? You love him, hate him, indifferent to him. The guy sucks up all the oxygen and news flow that there is. It's all Trump. It seems chaotic. Maybe he's playing 10D chess. Maybe it's the art of the deal. Maybe he's a buffoon. Maybe he's screwing everything up. No one, how can you know? Eventually, we'll find out exactly what's going on. The interesting thing about Trump, which is interesting, is that eventually he gets to where he wants to go. It seems a lot of stuff gets broken, a lot of things get messed up. But eventually or I don't even know if he gets to where he wants to go. He seems to get out of whatever mess he's in. He has this talent to somehow come out of all of these difficulties unharmed, unscathed, and everything is okay. He kind of can just move on. It reminds me of like just one of the people that falls off of a top building, a very high building, and somehow hits a couple of tents and bounces off some tents and then just lands on their feet and then just just high and just walks away. It's all chaotic, it seems, but I don't know. I just have this sense that eventually things will somehow work out. At least for Trump, I think they'll work out. I don't know how things are going to shake out for everybody else, but it's all Trump. It's all Trump in the United States. I think that's it. And I think it's a lot of people are getting very upset, very angry with Trump. Some people are loving what he's doing. Some people are really getting upset. I would just say to just wait and see. Just wait and see what happens. I mean, with Russia, Ukraine, I follow it every day, and it's changing every 24 hours the position. But eventually, we'll get to where this thing is going.
Yes, I just want to say about you following it every day. You and Alexander Makiris do incredible coverage on Ukraine. I listen to every single one of your videos that you two do together. You need to produce less content, both of you, because I can't keep up with the rest of it. Okay, so you just do too much, and you need to get out more, Mr. Christoforou. Mr. Krainer, anything on the United States?
I have to agree with the last thing you said, Rich. And after the German elections, I had to put myself through a little bit of mainstream media coverage because I wanted to understand what happened, And I haven't owned a TV in about 10 years, maybe longer. I mean, I own the box, but it's just not plugged into anything, and I don't watch it. And so I haven't watched television for a very, very long time. And so now when I watch the coverage to get the sense of what happened in Germany, I was absolutely shocked by how lame it is. It's insane. Because I also, follow Alex and Alexander, and that's how I keep up to date with what's going on in Ukraine and elsewhere. I listen to other podcasts as well, but I think that the Duran is definitely one of the best in terms of quality of the content, in terms of authoritativeness of the opinions that are presented. And so when you mentioned this, just the contrast of that, which is what, two webcams and versus television, where you have all these puppets in expensive suits on these $1 million props. It's almost a joke. Anyway, back to your question. I think it's very hard to judge what's going on in the United States. I think that one of the really, really relevant questions is the administration careening left and right and making it up as they go along, or are they really clever and they thought things through? Because, if they're clever and they thought things through, then you might kind of try to think where they're going and try to guess what they're trying to do. If they're careening left and right and making up as they go along, then there's no guessing what might happen. So from what I've been able to find out from other people who claim that they know people in the Trump administration, participated in high-level meetings, blah, 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 it turns out like this. Trump is not a deep thinker. He doesn't give that impression. And so that's not good. But I have a first-hand testimony from a Croatian politician from Bosnia who went to the United States for a series of meetings, not with Trump, not with Rubio, but with the people deeper down in the guts of the administration. And he came back saying, I'm very impressed with how well informed and well briefed these people are. They know the issues in detail. And we had very high quality discussions. He said, when I went there, I thought I was going to have to explain to them where Bosnia is on the map. And he said, I found that they understand perfectly well what is going on. Well, if they understand perfectly well what's going on in Bosnia, I imagine that at that similar level, people are going to have even clearer understanding about what's going on in the Middle East, in Ukraine, in Europe, in Britain, in the world of finance and economics and so forth. And I think that the person on top is probably going to end up getting some of that advice, and it's going to be good advice.
Yeah.
So I think that what could be behind Trump's "Make America Great Again" plan? It can be this. It can be throwing stun grenades left and right to get everybody's hair on fire. There's got to be a more ambitious plan to it. And I'm starting to think, because I'm also listening at the war of words that's kind of gathering between Trump and Jerome Newman, the head of the chairman of the Federal Reserve.
Jerome Powell.
What did I say?
You said Jerome Newman. I don't know who he is.
Oh, sorry. I have no idea who he is either. Jerome Powell, yeah. And I wonder if Trump is planning on taking control of the Federal Reserve Bank, which is something they obviously couldn't say out in the open, and switching the United States from the British free trade system to the American system of political economy, which would be huge, actually, because all 8 US presidents who have been assassinated or mysteriously died while they were in the office were proponents and promoters of the American system of political economy. You know, the Hamiltonian system, where the central bank issues credit for productive uses, for the productive economy, reindustrialization of the country. So that's a you know, if he said that out in the open, that would be a good way to get himself shot again. So if that's the plan, then they're not going to tell us. So we can't expect that we will pick it up from anybody's statement. But I think that we need to pay attention to the results of his policies, not to what he says, but what actually happens, and how and the direction which it moves the U.S. economy. So things like auditing the members of Congress, speaking about nationalizing the Fed, taking control of the Fed, getting rid of Jerome Powell, loosening up the alliances with the European powers, increasing cooperation with Russia and China. Because let's not forget, for all the war of words over the tariffs, Trump said that he's speaking with Xi Jinping regularly. So I think it's possible that there is this kind of a tectonic shift in the works. Whether it is or not, I don't know. Whether it will be successful or not, I don't know. But if there's a plan, I think that has got to be the plan, because I don't know how else you make America great again.
Yep. Thank you, Alex Krainer. Mr. Christoforou, any last words before we finish up?
No, I mean, I agree with that, with what Alex said, actually. I mean, I think it's, you know, either you are going to get some very a tectonic type of shift from Trump, which does move the U.S. in a different direction, and maybe that is part of the plan. I try to stay away from, you know, any type of chess references, but because everyone loves to use this. But yeah, something sophisticated is going on, which they can't talk about, or they are just kind of, you know, making it up as they go along. So yeah, I could definitely see that. I think you do have to pay attention to Russia and China, and as much as Trump says about China, or as much as he talks about them ripping us off, and you have the trade and tariff wars, and they're doing a lot of damage. People always got to remember that Trump always does say, "I get along with Putin, I get along with Xi." He doesn't say that about the Europeans. He doesn't like the Europeans at all, right? Doesn't like them at all. And they hate him equally, right? They hate him just as much. So there could be something very, very big at play, and no doubt that Trump. I still believe that Trump, once again, hate him or love him, came in with a vision, with an idea of reindustrializing the United States. What that means, okay, we could do a whole nother 2-3 hour video on that. But in his mind, and I agree, he's not a deep thinker, but in his mind, he's an instinctual thinker. He thinks with his gut, I think, and I think that's very American as well. To think with your gut and to go for things in that kind of way. He was thinking reindustrialization, make America great again. Let's reindustrialize. Let's bring the jobs back, and all of these things.
Right. Okay.
I just wanted to throw in one more thing before we go, because it like a concrete example where the top level narrative doesn't match the, let's call it, middle level sophistication, right? Because, for example, in this war of words with China, we often get the fentanyl story and the epidemic of overdose deaths in the United States, and it's all China because they are smuggling all this fentanyl and blah blah blah. Well, most of the drugs that and the chemicals used in production of pharmaceutical drugs comes from China, including the compounds that are used to synthesize fentanyl. So it's not necessarily a deliberate, malicious smuggling operation by China as you get through the high level narrative. But then I listened to an interview with an American. I forget the name or his position, but he was one of the people investigating this drug smuggling operation and then they busted the largest ever fentanyl lab, not in Mexico, but in Canada. And what I've been trying to impress on people in my Substack articles and elsewhere is that if you want to break the drug cartels, you have to attack the money laundering banks. They're the ones who hold the whole organizations together. And nobody's talking about this. But this guy who obviously investigated the issue, researched the issue, understands the problems, he actually went into the whole money laundering bank issues and identified the money laundering banks as the main culprits. So it means that, here it's China, but down here in the hierarchy, it's like, yeah, it's coming not only from Mexico, it's coming from Canada, where the prime minister swears allegiance to the king in London. And then they understand that the money laundering banks are the actual godfathers of the whole organization. And so there you go, somebody knows. And so what's going on, what's being done day to day in these struggles, we don't know, but there's some evidence that they're not being stupid, that they're actually that there's actually sophisticated thinking that's available to the administration in their command and control hierarchy.
Yep. And then the money laundering banks in Canada, we follow the money trail back to the city of London. And we have done a round trip from the UK back to the UK as we finish up. Alex.
Well, it would be one of the traditionally used tools of foreign policy for the last 200 years.
Yep. Alex. Thank you. Alex's. Thank you. Links in the description below. And I just want to say, just what you said about the Duran earlier, right? One of the things that's really great about the Duran is its smart, insightful analysis and opinion. And, you and Alexander are both, you don't rubbish people. I remember before Trump was elected, The Guardian, convicted criminal Trump. Every single time they mentioned his name, they smeared him. You guys don't do that. It's like, okay, this guy's like this, or this is what they're doing, this is what we think it might be. Just the sort of smart analysis that used to be commonplace on the mainstream media. So it's really, really great, worth taking a listen to. And Alex Krainer, thank you. Thank you all. Links in the description below. Please share this video far and wide. All the best. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.